So today just painting some of these. I've got 10 of them. I've done a lot of base colouring already. And just the step I'm up to now is just putting a colour on the base. So base colouring and colour on the base. Not the same thing. But I can explain that. So what we can see is most of the model is red. You can see here around the rim of the base that I primed this with a white undercoat. I think it's called Wraithbone, like a citadel colour. It's like an off-white. And over that white I put a red contrast paint over most of the model. So what that does, the contrast paint sort of does both a highlight and a shade. So as far as this model goes, it's put sort of a solid red over everything, but in the recesses between things like muscles, you can sort of see down here, and it gets darker. And on the raised part, it sort of highlights a bit. And if you don't let it pool, it does a smooth gradient. And that gives a nice sort of base to the model. So this model is supposed to be like a demon. And it's a demon of in the game of Warhammer, it's a demon of the blood god, the god of war. And when you're painting a big group of models from this, I guess, alignment or allegiance from this game, you use a lot of red. So hence the red base coat, base colour. I could add I could use different base colours like black or like a dark grey or something. Yeah, that could be interesting. But I'm just going kind of standard. And then once that red contrast paint has dried, I did a few different layers of dry brushing. I guess I've shown dry brushing before, but people who aren't familiar, you take some paint on your brush. Preferably your brush isn't wet beforehand, and then you wipe most of the paint off onto a paper towel or something and brush it back and forth across the area you want to paint, and it catches the raised parts of the model. So what that does is, you can see here, hopefully this shows up, maybe in the zoom, there we go. So you can see these little bumps all in the back. So you can see how they're sort of lighter and around them is darker. It's because you're sort of gently brushing over the model with progressively lighter colours. So yeah, this is sort of like the base colour, and then you'll start with a slightly lighter red. You can see how they sort of change. Then you'll go like almost an orange, and then you'll go just like a straight up orange. So it just gets lighter and lighter. Of course, adding so many different colours, highlighting up in your dry brush, there's probably marginal benefit. You could probably get away with just 2 or even 1 if you really wanted. So go from the sort of red base up to the sort of orangey red, and then the orange. If you had to go 1, you might just pick the orangey red, because just going the orange is probably too bright. But what I'm doing now is just putting down a flat coat on the model's base of a brown, like a light brown. I'm actually going to paint some other colours and textures over the top of this, but if I put this base colour down, then it sort of sets the tone below those colours. Instead of just leaving it white. It's a bit too obvious if it's white. And what else I've done on this is these swords and their horns I've done with a black contrast paint in 2 layers, and that left this very dark and very matte, and as part of the dry brushing I dry brushed these as well, so it sort of put a red tint on the edges of them. You can sort of, I don't know if you can see that, you can kind of see the I don't know, the edge of it a bit. And what I'll do after that is, well, the next step was to paint things like the handguard and the hilt or the pommel or something on the sword. Paint them in a sort of bronzy kind of copper. The next step after this will be to, I guess, put a wash over those to darken them down a bit. they're a little bit bright, but I'll also put a wash over the blade. And what that does is it blends together. Actually, there's another step before that, but I'll get to that eventually when I put it on. It blends together the different colours used in the dry brushing and highlighting, so it means you've got a softer transition between two colours. The wash kind of masks that. You can do it without a wash, but the wash just makes it very easy. And the step I wanted to do just before putting the wash on is to put highlights on the blade. So I'll do that with probably starting on these two colours, sort of paint all the edge and then raised edges with that, and then probably even lighter orange for the as the spikes on the blade sort of point up, and the very tips I'll put a very light yellow. And I can get an example of a model that I've already done. And I'll also put more black contrast on the horns because they get caught up in the dry brushing, so they go quite black. And after that, there's a few more steps. I paint the tongues purple and I highlight those up, and I paint the eyes with a sort of orange and yellow, and then I put a red gloss over that to tone it down slightly and blend it, but also to already done that one, but also to flatten it out a bit, because if I have just like a big orange sort of eye socket on the model and a yellow dot in the middle, that can stick out a bit much. So I want it to be a little bit more subtle. Looking for sort of want it to look like the eyes on the model are sort of like burning embers. Not flashlights, but sort of, like a little hot coal sitting inside their head. Given that these are supposed to be demons from the god of war and blood and skulls, I've got a lot of skulls on all the bases, so I don't know if they show up really well here, but you can see. I'll show you an example of a finished product shortly. So you can see what I mean. Doesn't help when it's all the same colour. effect I'm going for on these bases is like a dry wasteland with skulls. So normally on bases I put grass and things down, tough little tufts of grass, things like that. But yeah, I don't want this to look like it's somewhere that was once thriving or something. I want it to look like it's always been a bit of an unpleasant place. I actually prefer painting the bases on models to painting the actual models a lot of the time. I think bases can be a bit more forgiving. They I guess you want to create a sense of, well, you want it to be natural. If it's a nature base, I guess you could do like a mechanical type thing, but I haven't done that yet. But nature's not. Well, nature doesn't do straight lines, they say. So I guess it can be a little bit more forgiving when you're painting a base. Like there's not really mistakes as much as there's just sort of adjustments. Although I don't really agree that nature doesn't do straight lines. Just depends on where you're looking. Some crystals form in nature in a straight line. A crack in a rock can be quite straight. But, I understand the sentiment. One thing I haven't done on a base before is like a tropical base. With big leaves and vines. It could be interesting. Could use pieces from a fish tank, little plants. I've always liked the idea of doing sort of a semi-aquatic base with water sort of filling up you know, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters up the base, represent the model standing in a river or a shallow pool. But I think you need to sort of complement the model you're working with. And there's no reason demons from the god of war would not fight in a jungle if the situation arose. But I wanted to give these guys a bit of a hometown advantage feel. So this is what I went with. So now I might get an example of a model that I've done before and show some of the detail. Might be interesting, but also it reminds me of what I'm trying to do. So I'll be back. So here are a couple of examples of the finished product. I'll start with this one. They're about the same, but still. So you can see here, I'll try to zoom in. You can see the purple tongue, and don't know if it catches well, but the blade, you can see the edge of that blade. I've got sort of highlights going up to yellow, but then I dulled it all down. I'm not sure if you can see it from there, but let's see. I've got the yellow eyes, kind of like glowing coals that I spoke about, and I've painted his teeth. I've used a magnifying headset to do that because they're so small that you need to pick them out one by one. And you can see on the base here, I've done some skulls, and I don't know if that shows up well, but I've got a lot of cracks in the mud on the base. That sort of represents the wasteland. So this is just another version, except he's got a banner with more skulls and some blood. And he's planted his banner into a little pile of skulls. So, yeah, all about the skulls with this. There's the highlight on the blade again. So yeah, that's what I'm aiming for ultimately. It's a little bit shiny because I've sprayed a like a satin varnish on it. Normally people go with a matte varnish. I think this one was actually meant to be matte, but it's gone satin over time. I don't know why. But I think for these guys it's okay because they're sort of leathery skin. So I think a bit of a sheen on that is okay. So yeah, that's what I'm painting at the moment. Thanks for watching.